Go amongst prostitutes, Fortescue. Go into the filthiest streets of London, into the back alleys and behind the workhouses. Seek out the harlots and the streetwalkers. Get to know them, get to understand them, win their confidence. Find out why they do what they do, and stop them doing it.
Welcome along to Film Talk. I'm Richard Edwards, and today we're looking at The Missionary from 1982, a wonderful British comedy written and starring Michael Palin. The cast also includes Maggie Smith, Denham Elliott and Phoebe Nichols, to name but three. What's interesting is the film was not just written by Michael Palin, but also produced by him and George Harrison. That's right, George Harrison was one of the producers, and that's because the film was made by Handmade Films, a company set up by George and Dennis O'Brien to help facilitate George financing the Python's second film, The Life of Brian. Handmade then went on to make a whole load of great British films, including Time Bandits and, of course, The Missionary. The story centres around Church of England missionary Charles Fortescue, played by Michael Palin. Now, you know, right at the beginning of the film, the story's not going to end well. You see Charles Fortescue's name painted in gold letters on the school board of head boys and prize winners. And a painter comes along and unceremoniously just blanks out the name. Obviously, the school doesn't want to remember what Michael Palin and Charles Fortescue have been getting up to. Now, Charles has been a missionary in Africa for 10 years, during which time he's been courting his fiancée, played by Sophie Nichols. Now, after 10 years, he returns, but still is a bit of a stranger to her. When he arrives at the house, he mistakes the maid for his fiancée. Not a very good start, but they've been courting by letter, and that's really how they know each other. So as people face to face, they feel like strangers. But she's very keen to get married, and she encourages him to go off and find a really good appointment within the Church of England. She wants a nice vicarage, a wonderful parish, lots of children, and somewhere where they can settle down and play a really comfortable, traditionally English rural life. A few days later, he's invited by the bishop for a meeting to find out what appointment he's going to be given for his new challenge now he's back in England.
Now, let me get straight to the reason why I brought you back, Fortescue. How are you with women?
I beg your pardon, sir?
I know you're good with Africans, but how are you with women?
It's not as you would imagine. The bishop, played by Denham Elliott, is a sports-loving fanatic. Everything he says is in sporting analogies. You're hit for six, or you're some kind of rugby analogy or football analogy in every element of his conversation. So he has a meeting with Fortescue and says, look, there's a real problem in London, and that's with fallen women. The other churches are way ahead of the Church of England. They're falling behind and they need to catch up and take the lead. It's their responsibility to be the best church, the top church, very competitive, very sportsmanlike in his approach. And so Charles Fortescue is given the challenge of setting up a mission in London to try and save fallen women, women of the night, prostitutes, lots of analogies. Very difficult for them as men in Victorian England to sort of cut to the chase and say what they really think. Back at home, Fortescue's fiancée, Deborah Fitzbanks, played, as I say, by Phoebe Nichols, is devastated at the news. This is not the appointment that she was hoping for. But to support her husband-to-be, she gets right behind the project and helps with fundraising. She happens to know Lady Ames, who Fortescue bumped into on the boat on the way back when he dropped his fertility symbols that he'd been given by the villagers in Africa in anticipation of his forthcoming marriage. She writes to Lady Ames, who's an old friend of hers, who happens to be married to the second wealthiest man in England. And so, with the help of Lady Ames, played by Maggie Smith, Fortescue is able to get the missionary up and running. But Lady Ames has a hidden agenda. She's married for position and money, the second wealthiest man in England, but there's no way she's going to be getting anywhere near this guy. They don't have physical relations. It's purely for position. But she's taken quite a shine to Fortescue, and she keeps making a pass at him every time they meet. Fortescue, confused by what's going on, pushes back, desperate not to upset things with his fiancée. But as things progress with the mission, it soon finds that Fortescue has extra services he can provide to help the girls feel relaxed and at home. There's one night where they're a little bit concerned, a little bit worried about sleeping alone, so they snuggle up to Fortescue in bed. One thing leads to another, and leads to a lot more. and certainly the missionary's view on life and his experience of life changes very rapidly. When Lady Ames discovers that he's living something of a double life and that her efforts to snare him are somewhat scuppered, she storms out and withdraws the funding, and the whole mission starts to fall apart.
Look at them, you know, some of them are only 13 and 40 for here. How old are you, my dear?
23.
23. You don't have to do this work, you know.
Come on, gents, one at a time.
I am a bishop.
Sorry, sir, no reductions.
I can help you find other work, my dear. Come on, please, please.
The Missionary is a charming British comedy that makes light of a bygone Victorian era. It's not one of those rip-roaring, side-spreading comedies where you're going to have to pause every few seconds just to recover or get yourself back up off the floor. It's kind of implied humour, subtle humour, quite intellectual in its approach, but it takes you through the story. There's a really strong narrative, very strong characters, as you'd expect from Michael Palin, but very well presented, beautifully shot, great evocative scenes of Victorian London, and some great rural scenes at the vicarage for the Fitzbanks, Reverend Fitzbanks and his daughter Deborah. So great photography, great acting, great costumes that really are evocative of the character and help bring the characters to life. It's a beautiful film, an absolutely enjoyable film, but it's, I think, Michael Palin at his best. Now, he's appeared in many, many films, not least of all, of course, the Monty Python films, The Holy Grail, The Meaning of Life, The Life of Brian, and now for something completely different, to recite them not in sequence. But also other films too. He collaborated with Terry Gilliam on Brazil and also on Time Bandits. But this is something written and starring Michael Palin. But what's really interesting with The Missionary, Michael, like many of the other Pythons before him and other films that he's been involved with, there's a book to go with it. And this isn't a novel or some kind of scrapbook. It's a full copy of the screenplay, but with plenty of other photographs too. So you can follow the script if that's what you want to do, or you can kind of read the script in your own leisure and kind of really get into the story. Lots of great pictures taken from the production, very evocative of the film. It's a great asset to have, and if you're revisiting the film on DVD or digitally or whichever format you're going to look at it on, you know, you've got an extra element, an extra dimension that helps bring the whole film to life. So if films are your thing, getting the book, watching the DVD, watching it digitally, you've got the full package of elements. You can really get under the skin of the film. All in all, I say The Missionary, its book, the DVD, and all the other elements that go with it make it a fun, entertaining package. Beautiful humour, very subtle, very intellectual, a great story. Michael Palin, you can't go wrong. He's just so awfully nice. But it's extremely well written, great characters, great story, great locations, great cinematography. All the elements come together and combine to make it, I think, one of the most charming, beautiful comedies from the 1980s and an excellent example of the work of the excellent Michael Palin. Be great to know what you think, so do leave some comments down below. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe to our channel and don't forget to hit that little bell icon to get a notification every time we release a new video. Thanks for watching. See you next time.